Okay, so this is part one of the supplier information management. We're going to look at invites, registration, profile collaboration, and corporate profile maintenance. So first, let's look at the invite process. It can come from many different directions, but let's say it's an electronic file like this, an XML file coming from the ERP system, and electing to bring over a new supplier. That becomes a inbox message from the system to the supplier, inviting them to join, and then they click on the link within that email, and they can go into the registration screen. And the registration screen is a web screen where they need to verify certain information about them so that we can identify and make sure that we're connecting them correctly. So we need their company name, their address, their EIN number, which may be filled in automatically by the system in the invite that's coming. And then we need some contact information because we're going to need to have a back and forth with their email that we need to confirm. We may also identify that they have different customers already on Nipendo, and we could sign them up for those as well. At that point, they submit their registration, and they get another email that invites them to do the rest of the process, which is basically giving more information according to what their customer wants. Okay, so when they get that email, they click on that, they go through perhaps a password setup and so on, which we're going to skip here. This is their home screen on the portal, but if you scroll down to the customer collaboration tab, that basically allows you to look at what the customer wants to know about you versus what you have about yourself. So those are two different profiles that need to be reconciled within the system. So in this case, for customer IAI, the first one on this list, and remember there could be multiple customers on this list, but we're just going to make it easy and just do this one. They would click to open the IAI file, and they'd be able to see the supplier basic information, general company contact information, and so on, and two values for each so that they can see side by side how they know themselves versus how their customer knows them, and they can make sure that those are correct. On the right-hand side, in the supplier compliance request area, there's a bunch of actions that they need to take, and that's where they're going to focus their effort. Because that actually tells them what they need to do. It's kind of a checklist of what they need to do to make sure that they can share their bank information, their financial information, and so on. So you can see the status is onboarding for the supplier. This designates that they're in the middle of a process of getting put into the supplier system. And if you look at the to-do list on the right-hand side, that can focus the supplier on what they need to do. So that would take them to the second tab, which is the financial tab here because it's bank information, and they need to add or edit some information here. And what the system does is it prompts them to go to their corporate settings to find general information about them that they could share with this particular customer. So that's what we will do next. We'll click on the Proceed to Settings menu, and what that does is that brings us to the account settings for this company. You'll notice that we're on the corporate profile maintenance side of things now. We're not talking about what we're doing specifically for IAI, the customer. We're talking about the general information about the supplier that is maintained by the supplier about themselves. And so that information can then be shared with multiple customers as needed by those customers. And it's not just the standard information like the company's name or their line of business or their tax ID or anything like that. It could be more than that. It could be financial information and contacts, and we'll go through that here in just a moment. So this information could also be the financial information, and for the bank details, for example, this supplier may want to set up their banks. There could be multiple banks that they set up, but they may want to set up a bank and then share those details with any one of the customers who are accessing them across the Nipendo network. So in this case, we fill in the bank information with the relevant identifiers and so on so that that can be shared. Okay, so with that information in the system now, again, maintained by them, there could also be some required certifications to show that the bank is actually recognizes this company by their tax ID or whatever, and you can upload information about that too. For example, this is just an example of what you can do to authenticate your bank account. There's many other methods as well. You can also edit the form for financial details. If those details are kind of the information that's being requested by a particular customer, then they could also be gathered so that you can have them available for other customers as well, because it's the same information. Some customers want it, some don't. So you want to have it stored in one place, not just with regards to what one customer asked. Okay, finally, there's contacts at your company as a supplier that act with the different customers, and they may act across customers. So adding a new contact, this time the invitee is already by default added, but maybe they want to add an accounts receivable person who may talk to multiple customers, or a salesperson who talks to one other customer, that sort of thing. Either way, you want to manage those in a central place within Nipendo so that you're not answering them one-off every single time a customer reaches out to you. Okay, with the contacts saved, then what we can do is we can circle back to the profile collaboration where we decide to pull over this information for IAI's specific needs and then share that information with them so that if it gets updated, it's updated to them automatically. So let's go back out over to the collaboration panel and look on there, and now we have this ability to share information. So we can click to share, and on the financial information we can click to share the financial info and the bank info. And if you flip on back, you could see that just by sharing, those two items are checked off the checklist in terms of what would be necessary for full compliance with this particular customer. Here we are sharing the contacts, for example, same sort of thing. And then we can roll on over to other things like documents. Perhaps this customer is asking for a specific kind of document. It could be multiple documents. If that's the case, then we can roll there and upload a document for them to review from a hard drive, put an expiration date and a document date. These different documents can have different requirements in terms of whether they have expiration or document dates. Those are used for triggering people when the expiration comes up soon, or aging a document or whatever. The last tab is around statements. Statements, sometimes called attestations. These are areas where you're officially saying, attesting to a particular condition or different things that your customers are asking you to do. And in this case, there's a particular statement that's been included in the package of the request from the customer. So the action can be to open it, read it, approve it. We could approve it through a digital signature and capture within Nipendo, or it can be done outside with a wet signature as necessary. But anyway, this is another case of information that needs to be captured for full compliance to the customer's requirements. So let's go back to the basic tab, and you can see over on the right, checklist is all checked off. We've captured everything and shared information necessary. And the last thing is to click the Update Customer button so that this gets sent over to them, and then to watch closely on the status to see how that changes. So if you refresh this, then another tab gets added to this so that the supplier can keep track of how things are going, and that's this Validations tab. So the Validations tab brings over the bots that Nipendo brings into this situation, which is, for example, the document approval. We uploaded some documents. Somebody on the buyer side needs to read them and say yes, they're good or bad, and that's going to be information that we need to capture. And that concludes part one, where we went through the invite, the registration, the profile collaboration, and the profile maintenance. Part two will continue the process.